A marketeer, that's going to excel is going to ensure that they are continuing to bring valuable content to the audience, not simply more content.
And we are back for another one at the Breakout Sessions. And I could not be more thrilled to welcome a true marketing heavyweight to the show today. A leader who has been at the forefront of marketing to one of the most discerning and challenging audiences out there, the developer. I'm delighted to welcome Manish Gupta, a 4-time Chief Marketing Officer at Redis, Sonar, Liaison, and most recently at LaunchDarkly, the feature management platform that has fundamentally changed how software is delivered. And what a journey it has been for Manish. He has been instrumental in shaping the marketing functions at some of the biggest names in the developer tool space, including running Java marketing at a little company you might have heard of called Oracle. This is a CV that screams expertise in taking complex technical products and making them category leaders. And that's what I find so fascinating. In a world where every company is a software company and the developer has become the kingmaker. And marketing to this audience, it's a whole different ballgame. You can't just throw a flashy ad campaign at them. It's about building trust, proving value, and genuinely understanding their world. And this is a world that Manish has mastered. Great to have you, Manish.
Good to be here, Sachin.
Okay, so let's get started. We have a packed agenda today, and I would love to have these go through this conversation with you. So the first thing that we want to talk about is how you AI. So if I dropped your org into a pre-chat GPT world today, what would you feel radically different?
The pace at which the team moves is very different. There is a lot more output than was done or was possible before. The research the team does is much quicker to get to an answer and understand what's happening around you in the ecosystem. The insights that are available and how quickly those insights tend to be broader, whether it's about the competition or the consumer or the customer behaviors or the impact that perhaps a campaign might be having. So, any of those insights tend to be more readily available than perhaps they were in the past. So it's just the ability for the teams to move faster.
So don't you think, obviously, these insights are available very quickly. What analysts would take a few days to put together in the past, now you could just do a deep research with ChatGPT and you'll get all that information. Do you think that may be leading to some kind of information overload? Like, is this world better suited to people who are able to process information in a certain way? What's your take on just the amount and density of information that's now available to us?
Yeah, I think there is an element of, for your precise topic at hand, you're able to get the answer faster and you get to kind of make the decisions sooner. But I think in aggregate, when you think about a daily workload for anybody that's trying to consume data or consume the research to have a broader perspective, it can be overwhelming. There is a lot there, and sometimes it's hard to discern the good from the poor quality data that's out there. So the volume has increased to a point where you really have to reflect on where you want to spend your time, what is meaningful, and what's accurate. And I think there is the notion of overload that one must constantly deal with today. That's for sure.
Makes sense. So what's one AI-powered initiative you've rolled out at your team that you're especially proud of, something that moved the needle or changed how the team works? That's something that others might steal, so I'm asking you for a secret sauce.
Yeah, and there were many different things that were being explored over the last 3 to 5 months. And I would say one area in the business that we were struggling to become more effective on was in our PLG motion. We had a significant traffic to the website, but the conversion of the hand raisers and moving them from just being hand raisers and engaging with sales was a step that was in some ways broken. The conversion rate was very, very low. And what we needed was an effective way to reach out to the folks that had perhaps engaged in a free trial experience and engage so that they can move upstream into a paid customer, perhaps to a larger account and so on. And in that endeavor, typically we had an SDR that would give a call or connect with the hand raiser, and we would try to convert those. What we found was that the follow-up was not necessarily the most effective in terms of the data that was presented, the approach to that engagement. And so we worked towards deploying and researching and deploying an inbound SDR, specifically dedicated for that free trial experience user. And the idea was the training for this AI SDR was with a significant amount of data that was very much about the journey of that user. It was about the domain where they came from. It was about the kind of where they spent time or where they moved on quickly. So a lot of the information was fed into the training model that made the effectiveness for this AI inbound SDR quite good. And in fact, the results were starting to, it's still early, but it's starting to show that the conversion rates have improved significantly from what we were able to do earlier.
Interesting. So you're saying specifically conversion from hand raisers?
Yeah, people that have gone through the free trial motion. Yeah.
Got it. And what was the biggest, as you were kind of going through this problem, what did you realize as the biggest challenge to solve for in the data segment? Is it the context of that specific user that created that alpha, or was it something else that showed early results?
It was the collective insight that was packaged for the communication back to the hand raiser. So yes, the actual journey of the user, but mapping it to the data and the information we had in our own systems from the domain of that user. And together that becomes a very insightful conversation as a context that can then be communicated back. And that engagement is a lot more informative, it's more relevant, it's timely, it's more comprehensive. And I think all of those vectors leads to a much more productive engagement, hence the conversions tend to be better.
Got it. And what about the last mile? Was it the AI SDR itself communicating with the customers, or were you looking at this as surfacing up the right action for your team internally, and then they would kind of drive that conversation?
No, we actually had the AI SDR doing the first interaction communication up until a certain point, which would then hand off to the sales to their contract.
Interesting. Changing tracks a little bit, we talked about how AI can generate a lot of content and give you all the information that you need. As a marketer, this is my belief. Tell me if you disagree or if you have a different point of view. One of the core skills for a marketer is creating content, and I don't mean to say like creating content like necessarily writing emails, but the articulation of an idea or a concept into words that are then read, consumed, or words is generic enough to apply, let's say creatives, images, videos all combined together, which then gets consumed by the person at the other end, and that transmits the message in a way that they can understand what you have to offer and it's the right fit for them. So it's that art of marketing. Now a lot of those pieces can be done by AI. But the problem with AI is it kind of regresses to the mean because it's trained on like averaged out data. So you kind of lose that edge. So how does one, do you agree with the concept of like, the idea that marketers, one of the core skills is this content creation? And then if yes, how does one maintain that edge and creative quality while still leveraging AI to do more?
Yeah, I think, as we touched upon earlier, the AI tools are certainly helping with the velocity, and thus more content can be produced in a shorter duration, for sure. But in my experience, and the success really is about quality, not so much about quantity. Yes, you do need to have adequate amount of content for the right channels and for all stages of the sales funnel and all of that, but quality trumps quantity. And the good versus an average marketeer is, can they create a high value differentiated content or not? And so that is indeed what the marketing a product marketer and marketing broadly brings as value to the table. And so it's important that they manage to deliver that differentiated value that is important, that solves a problem for the audience they're trying to reach, for the personas that they're trying to influence. So regardless of what was done before versus what the AI tools are doing now, that has not changed, right? Quality is important. What the audience gets is important. Now the issue is, how do you keep that up while you're increasing the volume of output that's enabled by these tools? And I think that's where greater focus on what goes out the door, in simple terms, a better quality check, or perhaps an orchestration of the content engine by having a quarterback for content output might be helpful. That is at all times not only ensuring that the volume continues to increase, but that anything that goes out the door and ships to production for the external consumption meets the minimum threshold of, is it new, is it differentiated, is it not repetitive? And I think those factors play a really important role in ensuring that what is put out is meaningful and helpful. So you have to watch yourself where the AI tools might give you the ability to repurpose the same piece of content in many, many dimensions, formats, timeframes, and so on. But that is not necessarily going to give you the answer that has a true effect and impact that you're looking for in the marketplace. So it's that balance and trade-off. And the marketeer, that's going to excel is going to ensure that they are continuing to bring valuable content to the audience, not simply more content.
Got it. So you mentioned about something interesting, like having a quarterback who's responsible or for ensuring that you have, like, the onus to have a quality check is even greater now because of the possibility of subpar content slipping through. So did you make any structural changes in the teams that you've worked with? How do you kind of tackling with that challenge in your own team?
Yeah. We as marketeers are all used to relying heavily on product marketing function as the kind of the owner and originator of much of the external messaging, positioning, and hence content. But most marketing teams also have the content marketeers that tend to focus on repurposing, that tend to focus on ensuring that all stages of the funnel and different formats are supported and all of that. However, many teams don't necessarily really anchor on a kind of the lead owner for that. And I felt that, and I in my own journey have learned the value of this function. And I think in the age of AI, that's even more so important than it has been in the past, where if you don't have a function or a person or resource that's dedicated to ensuring the quality and differentiation and value of the content is maintained to a certain level, then I think you can go down the path of downward spiral. There's a lot of stuff coming out, but nobody's really reading it or consuming it. And as a result, that investment may not yield much return. So yes, I think hiring the right person, perhaps even a very senior level role, right reporting structures, I think very important. So in my case, I'd actually elevated the role of the content lead to head of content that reported directly to me, and that was kind of an indication of the importance of that role to rest of the team members and as well as just within my team at LaunchDarkly.
Got it. And operationally speaking, this person was then every piece of content had to grow through this person.
Yeah, I think all the way from defining the overall content architecture to where the produce centers would be or producer centers would be across the company to actually what's going out. All of that would be orchestrated by this function.
Makes sense. So zooming out a little bit now, if you kind of zoom out from your day-to-day role in your team and reflect upon the larger trend, how do you see buyers change? Are they showing up differently? Are they asking different questions? Are the expectations of buyers different from, products today compared to what it was, let's say, half a decade back?
Yeah, the bar has been raised. Expectations of prospects is definitely, at another level. What they expect on personalizations, they have very little patience for the same old redundant content which perhaps they got somewhere else. So they're looking for something better. They're looking for something that's tuned to them. Some of the latest data I've seen is 81% of the buying journey is completed now before the prospect engages with the salesperson. It used to be, I remember a few years ago, 57% was the magic number. And so if you think about 80+% of the journey is completed before the engagement happens with the salesperson, which means whether they reach or touch your product or company through content syndication efforts, through an ad they see somewhere, or through a white paper they might have received through a colleague, you want to make sure it is going to meet that need and gets them engaged. So it's very important. The experience of engagement really matters way more now than it ever did, because there's so much out there in terms of how they can be touched. You want to make sure you touch them the right way every single time. You want to capture their attention, keep them engaged, and finally convert them to interested buyer. So that journey has become more complicated in some ways, even though the ease of content production has become, it's easy to get a lot more out there. And on the other end of the spectrum, once you have the customer, the customer success function now plays an incredibly important role, not just in retention, but in growing the business. And in that environment, the customer success reps are expected to be well versed in depth and breadth of what's happening at that account. Every touch that is happening at that account, they must be aware of. So they need the insight. So whenever they do an outreach to the customer across the enterprise organization, they must bring that value to that conversation. So they're not repeating or being redundant in their engagement, and the customer expects that. So the prospects are expecting personalization, and the customers are expecting depth of appreciation of that account engagement at every touch point. So yes, the bar has been raised.
Yeah, I think it cannot be more, to the point than saying the bar has been raised. And like you said, we're getting fewer opportunities. We can do more. We can do a lot more, but we're actually getting fewer opportunities to engage with the customers. So you got to be on point, and that's doesn't make the job easier, but it is what it is, right? So if you're building a marketing team from scratch today, how would you think differently? Like, what's the sequence in which you'd hire, build out your team? What kind of remains the same from the older world? What goes away completely, and what's new?
What remains the same to me is the product marketing function at the core of the marketing organization. I think still remains the same. The need to have a 360 appreciation for competition, evolution of the market dynamics, for the evolution of technology, for understanding of your own internal roadmap, all of that leads to positioning, messaging, and sort of being the overarching architect of the narrative in the market. That has not changed. So, starting from scratch, that's the very first hire to me in a marketing team, is a product marketer. And as soon right after that is somebody that's going to take that positioning, messaging, and start to engage and convert folks into prospects and convert prospects into customers. And that's a demand gen function. I think third piece that comes very tightly along with that is the creative, that you are packaging things the right way beyond just the narrative, is how you show up. And given the experience is so important, you want to make sure that your brand appeals and shows up the right way to the personas that matter to you. And finally, I think it's becoming increasingly important is the community and the influencer engagement. What I think could have been or was usually viewed as, yes, we have a social communication piece that comes in at some point. Oh yeah, we'll do a little bit on LinkedIn and we'll do something on X and so on. I think requires a holistic approach right up front, because there is so much opportunity to engage with the target personas that can be done at very low cost, and the return can be incredible. It's also an opportunity to scale very quickly. And so I think that function is up leveled and prioritized, I think, higher now than it ever was. So those are the four buckets, if you want to say, that I think would become in that order would be important as you build a new marketing function.
Got it. And before I go into each one of those specifically, do you think that the buildup of the team is also different? Like if you were to at scale hire X number of product marketers today, you'll probably hire a third of it or a fourth of it, or do you think that remains the same?
Yeah, I think certainly with the tools, any function that was simply scaling a multiplier function probably is less required now. And so if you were hiring product marketeer for expertise and domain understanding, you absolutely need to continue doing that. But if you're hiring a product marketeer that was simply going to replicate and multiply the production of content, then you probably don't need that function. Similarly, if you're building a content team that's doing the overall architecture, orchestration, that's still very important. However, if it was simply a volume issue, then I think the tools can get you there. So yes, you have to think about these differently. And similarly, in the demand gen function, if you have campaign managers or if you have folks that are repurposing content or engaging with multiple channels or architecting campaigns for multiple channels, I think the tools can do a great job of refining your campaign streams for different channels. And so you don't need larger teams dedicated for each of the channels. I think that can be done. So yeah, there are different levels of modulation. I think it can be done in terms of size and scale in the various functions.
Got it. Got it. And you also talked about creative. We talked about content creation, probably in the written format. What impact do you see on creative? And you mentioned it as a key function, which means you're implicitly saying that we cannot use off-the-shelf models today to kind of do a lot of creative generation. If so, is that correct? And if yes, then does AI play a role in creatives? And if yes, what role it plays?
Yeah, this is one where I feel like you definitely need the creative hub to reside in a human that is the senior person that's seen what does good and what works and what doesn't work. But you can augment that function and bring these AI tools as companions, where a lot of refinement and testing can be done with the tools, with the instructions coming from the human. And so I think the creative lead is still the human. However, instead of needing lots of folks for doing either the basics of structuring the creative or for testing purposes, I think some of those efforts and activities can be handled by the tool themselves in conjunction with the human creative lead.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So basically saying like with the right set of people, we can actually compress teams across the functions, have more leaner, high performing teams, which use AI more efficiently.
That can iterate and get the volume. Yeah.
Makes sense. One of the things that AI has done, it's kind of blurred the lines between a lot of things. I can personally, I've seen the line between product management and development blurry a little bit. Like there was a time when a PM could only write mocks and give requirements, but could not build stuff. But now with all the vibe coding, you cannot. I don't think you can still build like production grade applications, but you can at least build out a proof of concept, and that has some impact, right? Like some of the internal tools can be done on their own. A lot of things could be given off as a starting point to someone else to work on top of it. In the same vein of blurring of lines, how do you think the marketing and sales function is evolving? There's always been a tussle between the two. I think that's a feud that you will never be resolved. But do you see the lines changing?
Yeah, I think the relationship, the who does what, what's expected of one versus the other, I think that's an evolution. It has always evolved with the dynamics, with the business models, and now with the AI tools coming into play. It's certainly taking a different shape and form. And also the expectations of what needs to come from marketing is changing, right? If 80% plus of the journey is already completed before a sales engagement actually happens with the prospect, then marketing has to play a much bigger role. What is fed in the marketplace, what channels are populated, what message, what content, what's the positioning of the company and the value proposition. All of those have to be tackled in a better way. We always have seen the inbound source leads tend to convert better than an outbound, and I think that is not changing fundamentally. So the leaning of the overall GTM function on get more inbound is higher now because so much of the journey is already complete. So it leaves a very small space for the high touch sales engagement to influence and impact, which is, I'm not saying it's not important, not needed, but if it's only 20% of the journey as opposed to a larger percentage, then the room for that is smaller. So I think the demands of marketing are going up. And I think marketing has to deal with the notion of produce more content, but high quality, as we've talked about. It has to deal with the notion, do a good job of providing that personalized experience and engagement, whether it's on your website or it's outside your website, off property, so to say. All of it has to be done right. Make sure the intent signals are captured across the entire ecosystem. Make sure the conversion on the website is much better through all the right orchestration pieces. So I think the evolution of what's expected from marketing has gone up. The percentage of impact the marketing can and should make is expected to be larger now than before. And finally, I would say the RevOps function is starting to become a lot more important anchor point. For more mature organizations that have a strong GTM setup, the RevOps function is going to play a bigger role. They can be the architect of the overall go-to-market strategy, where marketing and sales engages. They can be a place of providing continuity, providing resolution, being the arbiter of any debates between sales and marketing. And so I think that function is going to get elevated increasingly in more mature organizations, particularly with the AI tools.
Yep, this data around like the amount of buying journey that's complete is scary at some levels, and that's true, right? Like now you could just go into Chat GPT and like ask very specific pointed questions and get like 3 recommendations, and then do further research on that. So buyers are coming in a lot more informed. And what I have found myself personally, the hardest part in marketing is that you do not have like one-on-one conversations, barring a few channels. Like if you're doing events, that's fine, but it's always one to many, and you can only control the message and the channel, or not even control. You can influence the channel, but you can only control the message. And then in that, you can't control the setting in which the person gets your content. You can't control who in the organization reads it. So how do you kind of do a great job at telling your story so succinctly that everybody gets it? And now that's happening 80% of the time before they talk to you. My God, the job is getting harder.
It's getting very difficult. And that's why I think at least, intense level of personalization on properties that you control, your website, right, is going to become very important. ABM at scale, true, that truly can be managed at a one-to-one level, is going to become more important. So I think there are certain aspects of the marketing engagement modalities that will be more important than they have been in the past. They were always important, but I think now the ability to control that is better with these tools. But it can't be the same old website. With better chatbot. That is not the answer, I think. I think the answer is a true new level of personalization, new level of experience that gets, almost in real time tuned to what the persona might be looking for. And I think that's the power of platforms, such as Breakout, where I think they can deliver that experience.
Makes sense. So now let's get to brass tacks. I would love for you to walk us through, some of tool set, the pipeline generating engine within your, current org. So walk us through the main key components of pipeline generation in your marketing engine. So like what are the top 3, 4, 5 channels, whichever you may deem as the most important ones, and what are the tools and workflows that are powering these various components of your stack?
Yeah, everything starts with your brand, right? You want to make sure that the awareness of that you exist, what do you do, what's the value proposition, and why it matters, right? Is tightly mapped to the brand that exists out there. And so I think building that brand through influencer networks, very important, through thought leadership forums, very important. And I think uniformity, consistency of your proposition messaging. So no matter what content or what channel is where the target persona is engaged, they are hearing the same thing. It's the same message, the same proposition. It looks and feels the same. So I think it's important. That's the very first thing. The second piece is content itself, right? You want to make sure that all of the channels that you expect your persona, your target personas to be at, where they are populated with your content. You have content that covers all stages of the funnel, and you want to make sure that starts from all the way from awareness, engagement, consideration to final decision. You've got the right format, the right pieces in the right channels to support all of the stages. And finally, I think is the definition of personas and how many personas and the primary and secondary are fully covered. Many times I've seen that the teams will start with the primary but then ignore. We know that in these large buying centers, you can have many touch points and very large number of folks involved that have a different, varying levels of influence in the decision making. But you want to make sure you touch as many, if not all of those. So whether it's 20 or 30 or 50 people involved in these decisions, you're able to connect and deliver a unified message to them. The third piece is the channels themselves. So paid channels, of course, initially very important. You want to make sure you're able to invest at the right level and get the return, because it's very easy to spend a lot of money in those channels, and sometimes the return can be hard, might take a long time. So optimization of investments through Google or other paid channels and networks and so on is very important. The next piece to me is, and these are all connected, right? It's not in sequence. I think you got to sort of do all of it together. Is the website itself? Is the folks you bring to? That's your hub where you're bringing to deliver that experience, and you want to make sure you have structured and architected to deliver that personalized engagement that we talked about, and then to have the right architecture for conversion. And many a times the websites are viewed as a more elegant brochures without the conversion in mind. And I think in today's day and age, that's simply not acceptable. So websites that are dynamic, that are configured with personalization in mind, that are configured with conversion in mind, are going to yield much better end results. And then a big part of this is going to be ABM at scale, is to touch and connect and engage with that target personas at scale. So if you have a large enterprise that you need 50 people to be engaged, you want to be able to do that on a one-on-one basis, every single individual there. And so platforms that can give you that ability and to be able to run at scale, which today's environment has many tools that can give you that, is going to be very important. So those are, I would say, pieces that pulled together allow you to support, whether it's SLG only motion or SLG plus PLG motion, to build out a pipe engine, a pipe generation engine, or a DG engine overall.
And across these key functions, would you mind sharing what are some of the tools that have worked very well for you? Some those that kind of form an essential part of your tech stack.
Yeah, I think so. If you just went tops down from brand onwards, I think in the influencer networks, I would say Sprout Social has emerged as a leader and continues to grow its capabilities. So I think they seem to be the de facto. There are other pieces that are evolving, but we'll see how the landscape shifts. But today, I think that they are there. On the content generation, there are obviously many tools. We have seen Grammarly starting to emerge with some capabilities and continue to have a role to play there. We've seen copy.ai as being important. I think simplified is is a platform that tends to have a role. I've seen Vidoso as a very good repurposing video tool that's there. So I think there the list is a little longer. It's not let's just buy one platform that serves all your needs. I think the teams have to evolve with it and do that. On the campaigns, channel selection, management of the channel, connecting with the internal data, certainly evolution of tools, even your core CRM and your marketing platforms, whether it's a HubSpot or Marketo or Salesforce. I think they're all starting to offer capabilities that are becoming important. But then you want to be able to package them together and bring them up in a unified manner for engagement internally. So the enablement of the sales team can happen for the SDR enable and so on. So those platforms. On the ABM front, I would say Sixth Sense seems to be holding its leadership role in the market and has played a role for us at LaunchDarkly. And then on personalization, I think platforms like Mutiny are growing, but certainly are facing a lot of challenges from up and coming players like Breakout and others. So I think that landscape is going to evolve. The need is very clear. And I think opportunity for players to show up and disrupt the marketplace is also very real.
Very interesting. So as a marketer, the thing about marketing is there are like so many functions that you kind of do, and obviously, you can't have like one tool to kill them all kind of thing. It's just too diverse. So you end up with all of these verticalized, different specialized tools. What's your philosophy on that? Like, how do you empower your teams when it comes to using technology? What approach to it? Is it like go experiment, see what works, or just help us understand how should a marketer think about thinking like so many different tools, and where do you invest time, right? That's also, you have limited time, so how do you kind of make those decisions?
Yeah, I think this has always been an issue where there's a level of inertia in the team. We've always done this. This has worked well for us, and so on. One of the things I tend to really I send the message, I reinforce to the team on a consistent basis is you have to experiment. It's okay to experiment and fail. It's not okay not to experiment, right? And so in today's environment, that's just exponentially more important because the tools have become so much better that you are going to get left behind, not just as a marketing function, but as a company. If marketing is not taking advantage of these tools, they will not be able to provide the value, and hence the company is not going to remain competitive. So it's really a matter of, not are you going to be better, but it's a matter of survival. And so every single person in the marketing team, in my teams, knows that I expect them to experiment. I expect them to test new tools. Now, there's reluctance, there's inertia, there is fear, there is, lots and lots of emotions involved in these things. But I think you have to empower folks. So instead of tops-down edict on, here are the 5 tools we're going to use across the company or across the marketing department, it is best if each of the individuals or the teams can come up with their recommendations and pitch to the rest of the team as to why they want to use a tool or two for that function. Then they own it. And then they're able to, and they're very excited about it. So I think the leaders have to provide flexibility. They have to give the rooms for experimentation. They have to empower the team so they can make their choices and go and make it happen. So I think the ultimate decision might be check writing by the CMO, but I think it's best if the hand raisers come from within the organization. The selection comes from within, and perhaps there's an oversight on it. But I think fundamentally, each of the members of the marketing team have to rise to the occasion, have to make a recommendation on what are the tools that are going to make them more effective, what are the tools that are going to take the team and the company to the next level and be more competitive in the marketplace.
Makes sense. One trend that I've seen, I'm not sure if you've run into it, is traditionally for other functions, maybe outside of dev, build was never really a consideration. It was mostly buy, and hence like what to buy. But with AI, that seems to be changing. You can plug ChatGPT into a bunch of things and you can build stuff on your own. So is that something that you've thought about? Has that come up in your team discussions? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a different pieces of the stack where there's varying levels of discussion on it, right? If you go out and say, okay, we're going to build a CRM or the entire marketing automation platform, I know that there are companies that have out there tried and probably will emerge over time where you can just have big data warehouse on which and you build a variety of pieces and you can run with it. I think it can get there at some point, but in the short term, that is not where small teams, 30, 40, 50% marketing team is going to have an ability to do it. I think the opportunity is in areas such as content development, right? Agency utilization versus just going and using the tools to build versus buying finished product from external agencies would be a way to look at it. Website development, instead of outsourcing that endeavor, maybe you kind of build it yourself because now the tools allow you to get there faster, iterate faster, and so on. So I think it depends on what portion of stack we're talking about. Certainly, the tools are giving a lot more, I would say, the capacity and agency for the internal teams to do more themselves. The question is the readiness, the maturity, the state of affairs of the company that allow for varying degrees of freedom to make that happen.
Makes sense. Then coming to the question that I pose to every person on the session is about a tool that you recently added to your stack. Can you walk us through the full buying journey? What was the pain? When did it show up? How did you first hear about them? What was your buying process like? We've touched upon buying teams and ABMs and a lot of people in the organization kind of influencing their decisions. So how was that internally for you? And then, finally it got implemented and improved. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, the tool that's top of mind for me is Focus. And it's not necessarily a marketing only tool. It's something in the RevOps team, really they took the initiative, but marketing was intimately involved in the entire journey of what are the pain points, what are the tools that are out there, how do you make a choice, and fundamentally the issue was there were so many data points, intent signals, content pieces. How do you map all of that together and represent to the SDR or an account rep so that they can comprehend the value of all of these pieces in a way that they can then leverage for their engagements with prospects and customers. And many tools were tried and tested, but we needed something that was simple, that was easy to integrate with the existing stack, something that would be easy for the SDRs and the reps to be trained on, and for it to be iterated on. So Focus, was something that was looked at from all of these dimensions, and we looked at a few of the tools, but that is where the team felt most comfortable, and it has done a good job on delivering on the promise.
Interesting. Now to the most fun part of the conversation, our rapid fire. So you can, what comes to your mind instinctively, that's what I'm looking for. What's a strong opinion you have about AI and marketing that might ruffle some feathers? Your hot take.
I think the teams will get smaller and deliver more.
Do you look at AI as a driving productivity, augmenting people, or replacing people?
Yes, and yes.
Okay, I need a little bit of, subtext on that.
I think these tools certainly will allow and are allowing the marketing teams to do more. So AI tools improve productivity. There is no question there. But there are certain functions where they're a good way to augment. The creative function is a good example where the creative director will be the driver of what overall approach we're going to take to market on packaging a piece of content, right? However, the tools might allow them to iterate faster. And so it's an augmentation in that case. In certain cases where you're trying to, let's say, an inbound SDR, right? A tool might be a great way to deploy an inbound AI SDR, where you can provide adequate data to train the inbound SDR for following up on the inbound leads, and that might be more effective. That's an example where there may be a replacement of that function.
Makes sense. And one job that AI will never replace?
I think anything that needs physical engagement, like event execution, I think that will certainly be a human-only endeavor.
Yeah, it will be weird, right? We show up on an event and it's just
All
Tesla
the
robots talking to us.
humanoid robots.
Like we would have just, had a conversation online. Biggest marketing buzzword you'd happily never hear again.
Mission critical.
Okay. One AI tool in your stack that's truly game changing.
I'm going to go to the basics. ChatGPT. Everybody's using it. It's helping everybody. So yes, I know it's the very base level tool, but it is absolutely ubiquitous now.
And everybody in the organization has access. Have you worked towards adoption consciously, or has it happened
It
organically?
has been organic. The company at LaunchDarkly had bought a pro version and was available to whoever needed it. So organically, everybody. So it started with the free usage, but everybody has been moving. Yeah.
If there were only 3 tools in your marketing stack that you would keep, what would they be?
To me, the 3 categories that are most important. First is experience and personalization. So a tool that enables, enhances, and gives you the ability would be first and foremost. The second one is something that allows you to do more content. So content multiplier. Instead of having large teams of folks, just repurposing content. The third one is what I call an insight super engine. So we have data in so many different places, but if the data could pull together and give you competitive insights, customer behavior insights, effectiveness of campaigns insights, all of those things together, then it leverages the data that already exists or pulls data from outside. So a tool that can be that aggregator would be very powerful. So those are kind of 3 very important functions that the AI tools can help with.
Gotcha. What's one marketing opinion you held 2 years ago that you have changed?
So I've always, believed that content marketers were important, but I think the elevation of that function in my mind has in the recent months, I would say, has reached a different level than it was before. And I would say a quarterback for content orchestration that has a seat at the table of senior management can play a very important role. That I think is something, for me, it has been a learning journey, and I believe is different than what it was a couple of years ago.
I find that very fascinating. I know we've touched upon that a couple of times in the conversation, but if you think about LLMs, it's a token predictor. So its core job is to create content, and which is a power, but it's also in some sense a liability. So that's what you're saying, right? Like 2 years back, there wasn't a need for somebody to kind of orchestrate that. Now, because you can do a lot more, you need someone, and that function elevates. So it's very, very interesting to me, at least as a concept.
Yeah, I think guardrails. So if we just elevate this discussion higher, AI needs guardrails, right? Whether it is a regulatory framework at that level, or it is a head of content that's going to manage this, right? So you need to have guardrails for AI.
Makes sense. One final question. What's one book that's influenced you?
The one book that, I think there's so many of them, but the one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I think it has such a wide and foundational impact on how a business leader thinks that I think it's probably one of the most influential one as far as my own thinking goes.
That tells you so much about us as humans and has such wide applicability, right? Like you can take a concept which is like in a totally different space and apply it at work context, and it just fits. Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally love that book. So insightful. This has been an absolute delight, Manish. Thanks a lot for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. We've riffed about this in the past as well. Very interesting times to be living in, and I really appreciating your time and sharing all of those insights with the audience today.
It was really enjoyable to speaking with you, Sachin.